today to your induction training on our rabies quarantine plan here within our facility. So rabies is a preventable zoonotic disease which has been established through these vaccinations. The virus is currently occurring within mammals, mainly dogs, which is an issue in a lot of developing countries, seeing as though many people have dogs as companion animals. And a lot of these people don't have access to the rabies vaccine, hence why it spreads so quickly. So the main hosts are dogs, bats, foxes, cats, mongooses, raccoons, and jackals. Once bitten, the symptoms present themselves after 12 weeks of incubation period. We will go over these symptoms a bit later on. More information on the rabies virus itself can be found in your handout. So symptoms in animals: difficulty walking, seizures, coma, light and noise sensitivity, so you will notice a lot of these animals shying away, excessive drooling, muscle weakness, so they will be falling over a lot, and the changes in behaviour. So if you have a super friendly dog, they'll then become fearful and aggressive, and vice versa. In humans, it will present as a high temperature, a constant headache, discomfort near your brain region, confusion and aggressive behaviour, hallucinations, difficulty swallowing and breathing, and probably the most famous symptom of all, present in both animals and humans, is overproduction of saliva, resulting in the frothing at the mouth. So, what to do when rabies presents itself here within our lab? If there is a suspected rabies diagnosis, we first must place the quarantined animal into a quarantine kennel and in the other half of our quarantine room, and all other animals that may have come into contact with this individual. All of these animals will then be on a 10-day surveillance monitoring period, because this is the period from when the disease symptoms become clinical. It's 10 days from that point until death. If the animal does not have a vaccine, this is 100% fatal. So all substrate and bedding materials from their previous kennel must be incinerated and disposed of in the provided quarantine waste, simply because of the severity of this disease and the heightened transmission of it. The kennel that they have just vacated must then be sanitised with alcohol, left for a period of 1 hour. This denatures all particles, so it's easier to do. And then all staff members that have come into contact with this animal must dispose of their PP and uniform worn, place this in the incinerator to dispose of in the quarantine waste data to ensure that all of these particles are denatured and no longer present a threat. So this is the plan of our quarantine room. It is very open. It has its own isolated ventilation system. There are sinks located at all the major entry and exit points. There is hand washing facilities, sanitizers. All equipment is designated for its unit via color-coded system, which we'll go over later. There is autoclave in here to sterilize all equipment. There is also the waste room and incinerator, and there are plenty of observation windows, so people don't actually have to enter the quarantine room if they're not needed to. So for this, all staff must ensure you have an up-to-date vaccination for rabies. That there will only ever be 2 members of staff working in the quarantine room on shift. And this is to minimise footfall traffic and possible spreading of the disease. Once you enter the room, you must stand in the decontamination shower for the required time, which tends to be about 10 minutes. Please also remove your footwear from the shower and leave them there, so there are no outside particles being walked through into the changing rooms. You must enter the allocated changing room, change into your provided PPE suits, and these must be worn for the whole time that you're in the quarantine room. You must wash your hands upon entering and exiting either of the rooms, and then please ensure that you do not remove your PPE until leaving. No food or drink to be consumed to keep contamination to a minimum. Again, you must wash your hands when entering the kennel areas. You must wear gloves to ensure that there is minimum contact surfaces. All equipment to be used within the kennel room is stored within the equipment storage room within this facility. Same as in the observation room, there is a separate storing unit. There is a colour-coded guide. Please only use the equipment associated with the colour that is required for that task. If we get too much cross-contamination, the whole quarantine plan goes up in smoke because you're just transferring bacteria from the food prep to the kennel. Please ensure that the animals are housed by themselves. This follows a quarantine plan to ensure that they are isolated and minimum contact, minimum risk of transferring. And same for when we're observing them, only one animal at a time. Wash your hands in between, again to minimise any contact and transferring of viral particles. So the chemicals that we use when cleaning the enclosures is Verbal. Again, it's very good at denaturing and destroying the particles that we do not need. Bedding for larger animals is towels and blankets. This is so then they can be put into the autoclave to be cleaned and sterilised in between each use, denaturing all particles. For smaller mammals, there is sawdust and shavings, and once they've been used, they go in the incinerator again to denature and destroy the particles. When an animal is in quarantine, only full clean the kennel once they've left quarantine. Spot clean when they're out having observations. This again reduces stress felt by the animal and also minimises our contact with the infected particles and also prevents too much trafficking and moving of the disease. So if we have to administer any treatment, first place your animal on observation table. Please follow the veterinary guidance on the medication. If you can administer this medication orally, then place it into food. That again reduces stress felt by the animal during this period and is a much easier, calmer process for everyone involved. Ensure that you are administering the correct dosage. Please pay care to this because we do not want to overdose our animals and risk any further complications during this day. Once the animal has had medication, please return them to their kennel and observe for 10 minutes just to make sure no further symptoms or side effects from the medication appear and that they're still able to eat and drink after this. And then any medical waste will go into the incinerator. Again, to minimise contact, reduce trafficking. Any equipment will go into the autoclave to be sterilised and then placed back in its proper place in the equipment storage unit, ready for further use. So, the cleaning and maintenance of the whole quarantine room. Please only use the equipment assigned to the task designated by the colour codes. This is on both sides of the kennels. Please do not mix kennel with observation, as again there's different bacteria, different harmful pathogens that we do not need to be swapping between. All surfaces must be wiped down as soon as you enter the room, just in case no one wiped it down before, to remove any traces of anything. At the end of your session, again, to remove all traces of your work, and in between different tasks, so bringing out different animals, cleaning, medicating. Again, just to remove that risk of transferring anything. There will be a full clean of the room at the end of each day. All waste produced to be placed into the incinerator to then go into the biohazard waste, again to minimise spreading and trafficking. Any equipment that goes into the autoclave must be returned to its correct storage place. Any broken and damaged equipment must be recorded and replaced as soon as this happens. This is to minimise cross-contamination by using wrong equipment for wrong tasks. As our quarantine room has its own internal ventilation system, these filters must be changed once a week but checked daily to make sure that there's no build-up of bacteria there, because if they get blocked then we can't prevent the clean air from coming in and the hazardous particles from getting out. So, once an animal has ended quarantine and it is deemed fit to re-enter its original enclosure, we can begin the reintroduction program. And this has to be cleared by a veterinary professional, and then we'll reintroduce them slowly. Once they're happily spending a few hours together, then we can move ourselves and allow them to fully integrate again. All kennel mates must be observed 6 months after reintroducing, as this is how long rabies particles can remain present within the body, even though they're not active. There may still be a risk. And then if rabies or any other disease symptoms appear again, then these must be placed back into quarantine and we begin the whole procedure again. If an animal dies in quarantine due to rabies, then we very often donate these further to our examination lab to dissect the brain to study the impact of the rabies virus on their neurological pathways. This animal must be in the lab within 2 hours of dying. And then once all tests have been performed, we dispose of the body by placing it into the incinerator. In the case of an animal escaping we must enforce a lockdown. Try and corral the animal into a corridor where we can safely contain it, and then send the animal back to quarantine. And then we will come in and work on deep clean all the contaminated surfaces that have been touched by the individual animal and team to remove all potential contaminants. To prevent future outbreaks, all animals new brought in will go under 2 weeks of quarantine to ensure they have no traces of anything. All mammals, mainly dogs, cats and ferrets, will need to have a rabies vaccine. And by staff following all our policies and procedures, this will minimise the chance of cross-contamination. And that's everything for today, guys. Hope you've enjoyed this introductory training.